This is an episode about what happens when you're leading on empty and why empathy, especially for yourself, is not a strategy, but essential for your survival. Welcome to the Leaderful Inc. podcast, the place that you want to be if you want to learn what authentic leadership looks like today, including how AI is changing the way that we work and we live and we play. I'm your host, Chloe McKenzie, and today's episode is about a moment that really shook me professionally. It's the kind of season where everything felt a little bit heavy and busy, which is a theme you've heard from my recent episodes, but it's been such an important time for me to reflect and take away some of my most important leadership lessons and really identify for me what are those gaps that are gonna continue to hold me back or make me that much better of a leader going forward. I was in a time where I was running on empty. You know, when you are exhausted from doing all the things, your list is so long. There's so many people to take care of, to think about, to support, and to guide and to coach. I was running on the absolute reserves here, okay? And then in the middle of that, I got some feedback that really shook me off balance. It wasn't cruel feedback. It wasn't particularly malicious. And actually, this feedback wasn't even directed specifically at me. It was more about a group of people, more about the team as a whole. And though it wasn't delivered in a way that felt fair, in my heart, I knew that it wasn't all inaccurate. But I was so tired, so stretched, emotionally thin, that I just did not have the reserves I needed to be able to process that in a really productive and effective way. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, where something so small can trigger you and spin you out of control, and you can feel that irrationality as it's happening, and yet it's like a train that you can't seem to slow down. That was me in this moment. I can actually remember the feeling that I had because my chest was hot and my hands tightened and my mind was rolling through all of these scenarios to try to process whether or not I agreed with this particular area of feedback. And whoever is maturing in their own journey here in taking feedback, whether that's in your personal life, whether that's from your spouse or from your partner, you know that a lot of the time, the feedback is actually about shame. It's not anger, it's not rage, but it's a shamefulness, an embarrassment, a not wanting that part to be acknowledged. Maybe it's something that you're already self-conscious about. And there's a shame in how you are processing that and how exposed you might feel as those words start to land. Now, this is something that ambitious people, I don't think, talk about enough. When you feel like you are sprinting and you are giving everything 100%, even the smallest inkling, nudge, hints that something just might not be enough can be paralyzing. It can be triggering. It can be something that breeds as a deep disappointment and resentfulness, calling you out, all those perfectionists out there that probably really resonate with that. And what I want to point out here is that it's more about your exhaustion than it is about any of the words that were used. It's more about you trying to navigate through this pace of this hecticness. The feedback that you might have heard is, you could have done better at this particular thing. You could have put more thought into that particular thing. The package or project or deliverable that you submitted had a couple of areas to be desired. Those are pretty straightforward, but how your brain hears it is, I'm failing, they're disappointed in me, I'm slipping, I don't have what it takes, I'm not cut out for this. You're down in a deep, dark hole of what was a very simple delivery. For women especially, sometimes it feels like we're critiqued at a more intense level than some of our peers. Women also bear a lot of the brunt of some of the invisible workload, both at home and at work. So doubly, you feel like you're carrying a weight of things that people don't notice while also being critiqued for something much smaller than what you observe in other areas. Those things are all common and very normal. In this moment, you need to have a sense of empathy for yourself and be able to remove yourself from the situation, from the conversation, from that critique, to be able to let it land, to be able to take from it something that's going to help you be more productive and help create a learning moment into the next thing that you need to go and do. Running on empty means empathy is low, guard is high, Boundaries are thin, resilience is fading. So first, cultivating a sense of empathy that comes from a place of not overdoing it are things that you really need to consider if you want to be leading effectively and want to have the impact on others that is really in your heart. That empathy becomes the difference between defensiveness versus understanding, between spiraling and recalibrating, between conflict and connection. In the middle of that lies that empathy. And empathy starts with you, not your team, not with somebody that you feel needs to acknowledge you. It actually starts with you first. If you can't hold empathy for yourself, you will misinterpret so often, and every challenge is going to feel like a personal attack or personal indictment. I don't want that for you. Ambitious women, ambitious people are very gracious in showing that empathy to others, but it's time to turn the finger inward and see what you could do for yourself. So how do we do this? What if you asked the question, and what if you were to imagine that it wasn't you going through the situation you're in, but somebody on your team, somebody who you were now in a position to coach and guide? What if you asked yourself, if I were leading somebody else through this challenge, through this feedback, through this season, how would I support them? What words of encouragement would I have? What empathy would I deliver to them? You'd probably say, yeah, I'd give them some grace. Yeah, I'd help them regulate themselves before responding. Yes, I would give them some encouragement that helps them to see beyond this particular moment that has them in a bit of a fog. So much easier to do it for others. But when you think of it that way, it's like, why can we not always do that for ourselves? Self-empathy isn't indulgent. It is operational. It is actually the gift that you will pass along to others as well. So if you want to preserve that resilience and sharpen your thinking and show up as somebody who is clear, even in the sense of chaos, here are some things that you can do to cultivate that self-empathy and get you through some times that might leave you feeling a bit stuck or shameful or disappointed. The first thing is to pause before you interpret. Recognize that how you hear something and how you perceive it may not be aligned with how somebody intended. Leave some space for that gap to exist. And in that pause to interpret, you might find where you're maybe overinflating something in your mind that actually isn't what the deliverer or the person that you're interacting with intended. Consider, am I just tired? Am I just hangry? Did I not have my lunch today? Am I overwhelmed? Are there other things that are creeping into this moment that are causing a reaction that may not be merited by the situation? Let your nervous system settle itself first. Now it's time to separate yourself from the moment. If you were to look objectively at the situation without that attachment, without feeling like it's a note on your character, what would you observe? Remember that you are not your worst day, in the same way that we are not our best day. As humans, the days and the ebbs and flows are going to be up and down all the time. Giving ourselves some grace and room and recognition that this is all a part of living and being and doing and leading, you have to do that. Separate yourself from the moment and be objectively clear about what happened in the situation that needs processing, what feels fair, what feels accurate, without it, again, being a reflection of you and your worth and all the things. Now, with that separation, you have some space to extract the insight and not let it be a thing that is shameful or a thing that you ruminate over and are thinking back, oh man, I made a typo in that report. Oh man, I shouldn't have sent that email. Oh geez, my team really could have been tighter on this particular thing. You got to be able to pause and move forward. If all else fails, returning to that question of if someone else were in the situation, how would I lead them through it, is probably the most generous interpretation of advice you could give to yourself. Then say it to yourself directly and out loud. Acknowledge what's good. Acknowledge that you have the capacity to get through this. Acknowledge that, yeah, you made some mistakes and that is the way of the world. And it's okay. And you can move forward. Lead yourself through those things just as you would somebody that you care about. Now, with a little bit of reserve and encouragement from yourself, hopefully you've got the capacity to re-enter this conversation with a full tank and with some objectivity and with humility, and also ready for it to bring you to the other side of the growth that is possible when feedback is helpful and when it points you to something you can actually apply. We'll get into a whole other conversation about the difference between feedback and judgment, which I can talk about all day long, but that's besides the point in this particular conversation. By the way, I've talked about using ChatGPT as a bit of a conversation partner. Sometimes it's nice to be able to run some scenarios of how you want to respond or of the situation before you and ask it or prompt it to give you some feedback. Do you feel this reaction is fair? How would you interpret this feedback that somebody gave me? Another lens can also help you balance out your judgment in whether your feelings about something are warranted or maybe just a little bit triggered or maybe just a little bit inflated by other things happening to you, your state, your emotional reserves, as I keep saying. Use some of those AI tools to ask for some feedback. If you're in a tired season, just hear me on this. You're not too sensitive. You're not failing. You're not losing your edge. But you are in a season where you're going to have to spend extra time trying to build yourself back up, making sure you are caring for yourself, nurturing yourself, pouring into yourself so you are not running on empty and you have some of those reserves to go through those tough days and tough conversations. If you're making an excuse about not going to the gym, not taking part in some of your hobbies, not going for a walk, not eating a proper meal during the day, you're going to have to check yourself on it. You have to make the time. If you want to show up as effective, pouring into yourself is going to be a really important thing for you to prioritize. Empathy isn't soft. Caring for yourself is part of the strategy. And I hope you'll take this into the week, thinking about ways you are going to pour into yourself so that you have more capacity to pour into others. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode.